Welcome back to Beautiful Mind today, and welcome to our next reading of Tunnel Through the Air. In 1917, when the United States entered the World War, young Robert was 11 years old. He had great ambitions to join the army and go to war. His older brother, Ralph, joined the army. Young Robert said that if he could not go and fight for his country, he would stay at home and work on a patent which would help them to win the war. He did not agree or get along with his older brother and was glad when he had gone away to war. His parents were still in poor circumstances, but they could not induce young Robert to do any work on the farm. He continued to tinker around and work with his father's tools, trying to make a bicycle, which he could ride upon the water in the lake nearby. He tried various kinds of lumber to build wheels for the bicycle, but none of them worked successfully. Finally, his mother suggested that he use thin cedar boards, because cedar was durable in the water, was light, and would float easily. He finally succeeded in building the wheels out of cedar, and after heating pine rosin hot and pouring it onto the cracks, he was able to ride successfully across the lake. But in short time, the wheels sprung a leak, and the bicycle sunk with him in the lake. But he swam out and brought the bicycle with him. Bobby was not the kind to be discouraged by obstacles, and later his ingenuity overcame the difficulties. After trying to put inner tubes from bicycle tires on the inside of the wheels of his water bicycle and failing again, he finally got some inner tubes from an automobile and placed them inside his wooden wheels and pumped them up. When they were filled with air, they pushed against the wooden sides of the wheel, buoying up the wheel, and he was able to ride his bicycle around over the lake without any trouble. His mother was very proud of him and said, "Bobby, one day your dreams of becoming a great inventor will he realized. You have not been wasting your time tinkering around with your father's tools, trying to make things." His brother, Ralph, continued to call him Fool Bobby, and Mother's Dream. Said he would never amount to anything because he wouldn't work on the farm like the rest of them. Bobby was always found a willing listener in his mother. She helped him with his studies in school and encouraged him in every way and showed that she believed in him and had faith that one day he would be a great man. This encouraged him to do greater things. The success with the water bicycle had kindled his ambition and created a desire to complete other inventions that he had in mind. Before we finish this page, I just want to point out, right? Bicycle. What does a bicycle have? It has two cycles. There's two 1-1s there. I'm not going to disclose everything in this book. You're going to have to come to my course. But you can see that most of the things are highlighted, and I make abbreviations sometimes around these things just to help myself. He told his mother of a dream he had of a white-winged bird that flew across the ocean through the air, and he was riding the bird. And that he received a great triumph and reception when he visited the foreign countries, and how his own people received him in great glory when he returned. His father called these stories pipe dreams, but his mother took great interest in them and always encouraged him. Robert talked very little to his father or brother, but always went to his mother and talked over things and confided in her. She encouraged him because she felt that he was an answer to her prayer after her eldest son had died, that God might give her another son who would live, and that she might have her desires and hopes realized, which were lost through the death of her eldest son. Robert was entirely strange and different from other boys. He never seemed to want to play with them, but he kept very much by himself, talked along different lines, and made a confidant of his mother only. She seemed to understand him as no one else did, and he always came to her for an explanation of his problems and for consolation in time of trouble. Robert's mother often talked to Captain Gordon about him, told him that he was a peculiar and most unusual child, and that she thought that his refusal to work at manual labor was not because he was lazy, but because she believed that he had a superior mind, and that if properly educated and trained, he would become a great man someday and an honor to his parents. She told him that Bobby had advanced ideas fully 100 years ahead of his time, and that he should be educated and allowed to follow his own ideas. His father, failing to understand him, agreed with his mother and decided, when Robert was about 13 years of age, that there was no use to keep him on the farm, but that he should be sent away to Texarkana, to school, to learn something and to become interested in the things along which his mind seemed to lead. While in this school, he met his first real boy chum, one who seemed to understand him, and one who proved to be a help to him in school. Walter Kenilworth was the son of a wealthy lumberman. He had every advantage that money could bring and was far advanced in his studies, thus being able to render help to Robert, who had no interest in grammar, but took a great interest in history and mathematics. Walter would help him with his work in grammar and geography. They became fast friends. Robert told Walter of his plans for the future, that he had hoped to be a great inventor, wanted to get an education and travel around the world to see the country and learn about things and develop the ideas which he thought would help his country in time of war. He had heard so many stories about his grandfather's adventures in the Civil War and his father's experiences in the Spanish-American War, that he had the desire to be a great soldier and serve his country. He spent nearly all his time reading the newspapers and following the progress of the war. He was extremely interested in the victories of our boys overseas, and when they began to turn the tide against the Germans, he was greatly elated and told his mother that he knew that the Stars and Stripes would never trail the dust, and that victory was sure as soon as the American boys went on the other side. Walter Kenilworth also had ambitions of becoming a soldier and making new discoveries and inventions along chemical lines. His hopes and aspirations were to one day become a great chemist. The vast difference in the environment and conditions under which these two boys had been brought up seemed to make no difference in their friendship. It ripened as the years went by. Robert and Walter were often together, and Walter often invited Robert to his father's home. Walter's father and mother became very fond of Robert. When the armistice came in 1918, Robert talked with his mother and father, asking them if it would be the last war. They, of course, expressed the hope that it would be, and Robert said that he had read the Bible and thought that the greatest war in history was yet to come. He began to express ideas about new inventions years ahead of the times. He begged his father and mother to let him leave school and go work in the automobile factory, where he could learn about machinery and understand how to complete the inventions which he was always talking about. School was over in the summer of 1919, and Mr. J.H. Kenilworth, Walter's father, offered Robert a position in his office during the summer months. After business, Walter and Robert would often go out automobile riding. Along in July, he met with a serious accident. The automobile was overturned, and Robert's arm was broken, and he suffered internal injuries. He was taken to the hospital, where he lay for several weeks before recovery. His mother was very much worried and alarmed over this accident, and thought it was best for Bobby to return to the farm and not work in the city anymore. His brother Ralph had just returned from France, where he had met with many obstacles in the war, but had received no serious injury. Robert went home for a rest after the accident. He had many disagreements and fights with his older brother, and it seemed to be impossible to get along. All of the trouble occurred over the fact that Robert would not work on the farm or help his brother. Bobby prevailed upon his mother to let him go back to school in the fall because he was making great progress and hoped to have a big position someday with Mr. Kenilworth's firm. In the fall of 1919, he returned to school, but made slow progress in his studies. His health was not good. He seemed unable to concentrate or make much progress. He barely passed his examinations at the end of the year, but continued to study hard and make progress in mathematics and history. In grammar, writing, and geography, he was always falling behind his marks, and Walter Kenilworth had to help him out. In the spring of 1920, just before the close of school, Robert's father obtained help to cultivate the cotton plantation. He thought it best that Robert should come home that summer and help to work on the farm. But again, the boy refused and met with stubborn opposition and abuse from his brother, who called him the fool inventor and said that he would never amount to anything because he refused to work on the farm. He said that he wanted to be gentleman Robert and called him the white-collar boy. These disagreements and disputes with his brother were very annoying and disappointing to Robert's mother, because she wanted the children to get along in peace. Robert told his mother that on account of his brother, he would never live at home again, that he would continue to stay in Texarkana and go to school until he had finished his education, and then he would go to work for Mr. Kenilworth. His mother had great faith in him and told him that she knew everything would come out all right for him, and that he should study hard, make the most of his opportunities, and prepare for the position Mr. Kenilworth was going to give him upon completing his studies. Captain Gordon had been very successful during the war growing cotton. Prices had gone very high, and he had accumulated quite a little money. But in 1920, cotton prices declined rapidly, and his cotton brought very little, which again reduced them to poor circumstances. Robert became very ill again from malaria, unable to work even if he wanted to. Up to this time, he had shown no ambition for any kind of work except to try to make something with his father's tools, talk about inventions, and some of the great things he was going to do in the years to come. His mother had always petted him because of his severe illnesses and accident, and his father often referred to him as his mother's burden or his mother's problem. But she had great faith in Robert because he clung so strongly to religion, believing in the Bible. Robert would spend days and hours reading the Bible and talking to his mother and asking her questions about it and its meaning. He had a great desire to travel and see the world and was always planning to visit strange places. While he showed great affection for his mother, his desire was to get away and see the world. This is chapter 3. I'm going to stop here and take a slight break and we'll come back. Chapter 3. The sun, the moon, and the moon's nodes. In the spring of 1921, Robert began to make greater progress in his studies, which greatly encouraged his chum, Walter Kenilworth. Robert would study and read early and late. Walter would often call on him in his room and find him there deeply engrossed, reading the Bible and puzzling over the interpretations of the meaning of many parts of the scriptures. One Sunday, in the early part of June, Robert and Walter went to church, and the minister took for his text 1 Corinthians 13:2. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith, so that I could remove mountains, and have not charity, I am nothing. Then the minister read from the 7th verse, beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. And again from the 11th verse, when I was a child, I spake as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. The minister further read from the 13th verse. And now abideth faith, hope, love, these three. But the greatest of these three is love. Again, he read from 2 Corinthians 5:7. For we walk by faith, not by sight. And concluded the reading of the text from the Galatians 5:14. For all the law is fulfilled in one word, even in this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. The minister preached a great sermon. Robert thought it one of the best he had ever heard, and one which impressed him the most. The minister talked about the great work of faith and said that faith without work is dead. But there could be no faith without love, because love was the greatest of all things. That God was love, and that love was the fulfilling of the law. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whomsoever believed in him might not perish, but have everlasting life. He added that God loves children who honor and obey their parents, wives who love and obey their husbands, and husbands who love and protect their wives, and admonished each man to love his neighbor as himself. Because love is the law of harmony and the power that created the universe. It is only the power that can prevent destruction, war, and human death. But with true love, we can overcome the last great enemy, death. When men love each other as God loves them, there will be no longer any strife or contention. Man will no longer covet what belongs to his neighbor. True love will deal justly and do unto others as we wish to have them do unto us. He preached about the ambitions, the love of the country, and patriotism, which inspires men to go to battle and give their lives for the protection of their home and country. He said, "Greater love hath no man than this, that he lay down his life for his friend," and that a great reward was sure to come to those who love and obey God. He talked of God's great command, "If you love me, keep my commandments." This sermon stirred Robert's ambition as nothing else. Had ever done before. It made him realize the love that he owed to his mother, whose great faith and love had helped to lay the foundation for his future career. He thought about what the preacher said, that a man deserts father and mother to cleave unto his wife, and that this was as it should be. He had always felt his greatest love for his mother, but now, for the first time in his life, he began to think of love for another woman. His mind turned towards the many beautiful girls that he used to meet in Sunday school, and those who were in his class. Robert's chum, Walter, had already had a puppy love affair in school with a girl by the name of Caroline Oglethorpe. Robert had laughed at Walter about this and thought it was all foolishness. But now he began to think that maybe there was something more to love than what he had heretofore believed it to be. Walter Kenilworth's family, being one of the most wealthy and prominent in Texarkana, they were at all the social functions at which Robert met all the younger set in the city. A few weeks after the minister had preached this sermon on charity and love, Robert was in church one morning and after Sunday school was talking with Caroline Oglethorpe. And with her was her chum, Maria Stanton. Walter introduced Robert to Maria. Maria was the daughter of a wealthy and prominent family. Her father, Colonel Stanton, had made a big fortune in building railroads. He was now a big lumberman and one of the most prominent in Texarkana. Marie was a beautiful young girl of about 13 years of age when Robert met her. She was of the true brunette type, with glossy black hair and dark eyes that sparkled like diamonds. About this time, Robert began to read novels and love stories and became very much interested in them, always taking strong sides with the hero and becoming very much agitated and aroused against the villain. He saw Maria frequently after this, and she attended the same school as Robert and Walter. Every time that Robert saw Maria, she looked more beautiful to him. Robert soon began to lose sleep thinking about Maria and realized that love was the greatest thing in the world. He confided his secret to his friend Walter. Being very bashful, he never said anything about his love to Maria. Finally, he made up his mind one night that he would write her about it. So this is what he wrote. Wednesday Eve. Wednesday is a day of Mercury. It's a day of communication. Dear Murray, you probably remember several weeks ago when I was introduced to you in church, the sermon that the minister preached, and his text from St. Paul, where he had said the greatest thing in the world is love. I agree with St. Paul. That is why I am writing to you. I liked you the first time I met you, and every time I have seen you since, I have liked you more. And now that I know I love you so much, I feel that I must tell you. I hope that you are going to love me someday. Your friend, Robert. Maria replied to the letter as follows. Dear Robert, I received your nice note. This is the first time that anyone has ever written to me about love, and I am all excited over it. I never thought that you liked me, Bobby. I always thought you were making eyes at Kitty Anderson in school. I do like you and think you are a nice boy. Yours, Maria. Okay, I'm going to stop here. We're running out of recording time on my Vimeo, so I will get back to you with the rest of this in the next episode. Peace and love.